Number 1. Not in one country, not in 10, not in 50. Number 1 in over 75 countries on Apple Music simultaneously. Let that number sit in the room for a second. 75 countries, different languages, different cultures, different continents, different everything. And every single one of them went to their music app and collectively decided that the most important thing playing right now was the same album from the same man. And that man is Ye. Kanye West, the artist formerly known as the controversy personified, the walking headline, the person that half the internet has spent the last several years either defending with unusual intensity or condemning with equal intensity. And somehow, through all of it, through every press cycle and every public statement and every moment that should have ended a career by conventional industry logic, welcome to Pop Showroom, where we bring you the stories behind the headlines. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because this story goes deeper than anything you've seen in the mainstream media. He just released an album called Bully, and the charts responded like nothing else existed. But here's the question nobody is pausing long enough to ask, because when an album this controversial from an artist this complicated dominates global charts at this scale, the chart performance is not the story. The chart performance is the symptom. The story is what it means and why it matters, and why it should genuinely make everyone watching this video deeply uncomfortable in the most fascinating way possible. Stay right here, because this one gets layered. Bully is not performing well. Let's get the language right immediately, because performing well does not begin to describe what this album is doing to global music infrastructure right now. On Apple Music, Bully reached number 1 in over 75 countries. Not regions, countries. Individual nations with their own charts, their own listening populations, their own cultural contexts, and 75 of them landed on the same number 1 at the same time. That alone would be a significant story for any artist alive. But then there is Spotify. On the Spotify Global Album Chart, Bully secured a top position. On the Spotify US Album Chart, same result. But the detail that is genuinely difficult to process, the one that sounds like a typo until you check the source, is what happened on the Spotify US Songs chart. Ye occupied all 10 spots. Not 9, not 8, all 10. The entire top 10 of the United States Spotify Songs chart was Bully. Back to back to back to back. 10 tracks from one album, forming a complete wall across the most competitive music chart in the world's largest music market. And globally, 9 out of 10 spots. This is not a chart run, this is a chart takeover. This is one artist deciding that the entire leaderboard was available real estate and simply moving in. Here is where the story picks up a dimension that the headlines are largely glossing over. Bully now holds the most global number 1 placements of any rap release in 2025. The album it surpassed to claim that record, J. Cole's The Fall Off. Pause, because that specific detail is not random. That is not a neutral data point. J. Cole and Ye occupy very specific and very different positions in the cultural conversation around hip-hop. And the fact that the record that was sitting at the top of this particular metric belonged to Cole, and Ye is the one that just knocked it down, is the kind of narrative that writes itself. J. Cole is widely regarded as one of the most critically respected, lyrically disciplined, consistently praised artists in rap music. His reputation is built on craft, patience, and the kind of sustained critical goodwill that most artists would trade significant portions of their career to have. Ye is, and this is stated plainly and without drama, the exact opposite of that energy right now in terms of public perception. Controversial barely covers it. The press coverage surrounding his personal life and public statements has been relentless, often damaging, and by any conventional industry calculation should have created commercial friction severe enough to slow an album launch. It did not slow anything. Bully landed, cleared the field, and took a record from one of the most respected names in the genre without asking anyone's permission. which means the audience separated the art from everything else, or they didn't separate anything and simply don't care about the everything else as much as the media assumes they do. Either way, the result is 75 countries, 10 Spotify spots, and 1 broken record. Now here is the part that should make everyone watching this genuinely stop and think. The album is called Bully. Not subtly, not metaphorically hidden inside a concept. The title is Bully. It is direct, it is confrontational. It is the kind of title that an artist chooses when they are not interested in softening anything, when the entire point of the project is to announce through the name alone that what follows is going to be aggressive, unapologetic, and specifically designed to challenge something. And then it went #1 in 75 countries. Think about what that means. An album called Bully from an artist who has faced years of public criticism, media scrutiny, industry distance, and cultural controversy just became the most globally dominant rap release of the year. The title is either deeply ironic or deeply intentional. And knowing Ye's history of calculated artistic provocation, the safe assumption is that nothing about this is accidental. Was the album named Bully as a self-description? As a response to how he feels he's been treated? As a declaration of commercial intent that he was coming to dominate the charts the way a bully dominates a space, without permission and without apology? The album exists, the charts are real, the record is broken, but the title is sitting there asking a question that the streaming numbers alone cannot answer. And that question is worth sitting with. Hold on. Right here. If your brain is working right now, if you are watching this and thinking this goes deeper than any coverage you have seen elsewhere, you already know what to do. Subscribe to this channel right now, before the next video autoplays and this moment passes. This is what this channel does. It does not read you the chart numbers and call it content. It takes the chart numbers and asks what they actually mean. It finds the layer underneath the headline and stays there until the real story shows up. Hit subscribe, hit the bell. The algorithm will hide this channel from you if you let it, and you do not want to miss what this channel brings you next. Subscribe, then come back, because the next section is the most important part of this entire video. Here is something worth noticing. When Bully's chart numbers started coming in, the Apple Music domination, the Spotify sweep, the record broken over J. Cole, the mainstream music press response was notably measured, notably careful, notably lacking the kind of full-throated celebration that typically accompanies a chart performance of this magnitude. Because the industry has a problem. The industry spent considerable energy over the past several years creating distance between itself and Ye. Award shows adjusted their approaches, streaming platforms reviewed their policies, brand partnerships dissolved. The machinery that typically amplifies a major artist's commercial moment, the press cycles, the late-night appearances, the coordinated rollout coverage, was largely absent from Bully's launch, and it still went #1 in 75 countries. That is a data point that the industry cannot comfortably process, because the implication is significant. If an album can dominate global charts at this scale without the traditional amplification infrastructure, without the cosigns, without the press tour, without the careful brand management, then what exactly is that infrastructure for? Is it for the artists, or is it for the industry's ability to control which artists succeed and at what level? Bully did not ask for the infrastructure. The audience did not wait for it. 75 countries made their own decision without being told what to think. That is either the most inspiring thing in music right now or the most uncomfortable thing in music right now, depending entirely on where you are standing when you look at it. Beyond the politics and the narrative, the pure commercial mechanics of what Bully achieved deserve direct acknowledgement. Holding all 10 spots on the US Spotify Songs chart is an achievement that requires an album of unusual quality and unusual audience engagement simultaneously. It is not enough to have a famous name. It is not enough to have a controversial rollout that drives curiosity clicks. People have to actually listen, repeatedly, in numbers large enough to push every other artist, every competing release, every established catalog hit, every viral trending song completely off the top 10. Ye did not just enter the chart, he cleared it. 9 of 10 global Spotify spots is the same story at planetary scale. The United States is one market, the globe is every market. Holding 9 out of 10 globally means that across languages, across cultures, across every demographic variable that makes music taste diverse and unpredictable, Bully was the answer. That does not happen by accident. That does not happen through controversy alone. That happens because the music connected, at a scale and speed that most artists will spend entire careers chasing without reaching. Here is the honest, unfiltered version of what Bully's chart performance actually represents. It represents the gap between public narrative and private behavior. Publicly, the conversation around Ye over the past several years has been dominated by controversy. The statements, the feuds, the press cycles, the public perception management, all of it has created a narrative that suggested his commercial relevance was in permanent decline, that the audience had moved on, that the cultural moment had passed. The charts just told a completely different story, and the gap between those two narratives, the one being told in media and the one being told in streaming data, is where the real truth of Ye's current position lives. The audience did not abandon him, or enough of the audience didn't, or new audiences found him, or people who would never publicly admit they pressed play still pressed play. Whatever the specific composition of those 75 countries and those 10 Spotify spots, they represent real people making a real, private, individual choice to listen. Charts do not lie. They aggregate. They count. They do not editorialize. They do not consider cultural appropriateness or public relations strategy. They simply measure what people actually did. And what people actually did was make Bully the most globally dominant rap album of 2025. Ye dropped Bully. It went #1 in 75 countries. It took all 10 spots on the US Spotify Songs chart. It broke J. Cole's record for global #1 placements. It did all of this from an artist the industry quietly tried to sideline, during a year when conventional wisdom said his commercial moment was behind him. The album is called Bully, and whether that title is a confession, a statement, or a warning, the charts have given it the only response that matters in the music industry. #1. Subscribe to this channel right now. This community covers the stories that require more than a headline, the ones where the real meaning is hiding just underneath what everyone else is reporting. Hit subscribe, drop a comment, tell this community what you think Bully actually means as a title, because that conversation is wide open, and the right answer might surprise you. Ye never needed permission to dominate. He just needed an album.